So start recording and welcome everybody. I'm so happy to see all of you. And I think most of you know me, but I'll still do the introduction. I'm Robyn Bolton. I am the founder and chief navigator at Mile Zero, which is an innovation coaching and consulting firm. And I am so excited to be joined today by Theresa Ward, who you see here. I'm gesturing. Maybe she's in your upper left-hand corner. Maybe she's not. Maybe I'm just gesturing to nowhere. Um, but Theresa and I met a little over a year ago, year and a half ago, and she does some amazing, incredible work with teams. And amongst the amazing work she does with them is helping them navigate change. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So Theresa, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll start with my first question because, as you know, I have many.
Sure. Hey, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Theresa Ward. I am coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. Feel free to type in the chat where you're coming from. Just kind of curious to see who we've got here. I am the founder of Fiery Feather, which is a team effectiveness consultancy. And the cool title that I've decided to give myself is Chief Momentum Officer, because I help teams navigate change through the development of effective systems, right? So we need clear goals and standard operating procedures, and we need some of those boundaries and guardrails to know what's what in our work. And then the other pillar that holds up team effectiveness is interpersonal and intrapersonal skills, self-awareness, empathy, emotional intelligence, communication, some of those softer skills that can transition through the changes of, oh, now we have a new standard operating procedure, and now we have a completely different set of goals. I started my career in fintech and spent about a dozen years doing everything from sales to product to innovation, but I always ended up doing the training. So I'm really passionate about adults learning and experiential education. And instead of, now teaching about cybersecurity and credit card processing, I train on meta skills like navigating change. So hopefully it'll be relevant for you all today. And I'm looking forward to the conversation with Robyn and with all of you.
Yes. Well, at least for all of us in the US, feels like change is happening at an ever rapid and unpredictable pace. We'll just leave it there. Um, so first question, kind of big meta question, is why why do people struggle with change, Theresa? Why is this so hard and at times so painful?
Yeah, I think I'll just answer with my own personal experience that may or may not be applicable to everyone else. But I think we'd rather have the devil we know, right? The status quo, what we've become familiar with, even if it's not ideal, even if it's somewhat painful, our brains can register that, yeah, we're here, we're coping with it. When we get thrown into unwelcome change, because that's what we're talking about
Mhm.
today, not the kind of change where you're like, I've decided we're going to do things differently, or I'm going to move to a new city, or I'm going to start, learning a new skill. We're talking about the change that gets thrown at us. I think it really challenges not only our sense of control, but in some cases, our sense of identity, right? Is this who I am? Am I a person who lives in this kind of community now? Oh, I didn't realize these were the values of my workplace or my, faith institution, as these big communities and big organizational shifts happen around us, I think it causes us to look inside a lot and question, am I individually doing everything I can, living with integrity? Um, yeah. And it takes our past and our future, and kind of collides them together to say, oof, what's going on right now? So that's my personal experience. And that comes from, years of picking up and moving and having to change schools or, going through all of the corporate reorgs as an adult. And I'm sure everyone here has plenty of stories, both from their past and their present, of those kinds of changes.
Yeah. So then, yes, I feel that. I feel like, especially the questioning of the identity, like, wait,
Yeah.
is this who I am? Is this who I want to be? Is this how people perceive me? And
Yeah.
so I find that, like, the change when it's thrust upon you, thrust upon me, like, which especially happens in organizational settings, like whether it's working at a company or, you're working with a nonprofit as part of a team there, when like change is forced on you, it raises all those questions you talked about. But yet then the person who's forcing it on me is like, isn't this great? And aren't we like, isn't this fabulous? And like, are they are they lying to me in themselves, or do they actually believe that, yay, this is fabulous? And why aren't they having that same kind of reaction and shock?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to tell sometimes. Well, maybe it's not that hard to tell. But it does make you wonder sometimes, is this person being authentic about the way that they are, how enthusiastic they are about the change or how committed they are to the change. And in some cases, you're in that weird middle ground, that middle management spot where you're expected to be enthusiastic about the change, even if you haven't gotten all the way through it. And then I think the thing that doubles or triples the challenge with navigating change is it's usually not just one. It isn't like, and now our budget is going from X to Y, and everyone just get used to it, and then you move on with your lives. It's usually like a budget and a reorg, and my leader changed, and my friend got laid off, and that project that I loved got trashed, and then you're dealing with
Mhm.
just all of these onion layers of change. It can be really overwhelming.
Yeah. And my guess is, or at least my experience is that, the leader who announces one change is probably unaware of some of the other changes that are also getting put, because it's like, the senior executive's like, we're cutting your budget. And then my boss comes in and is like, you know, we're doing a reorg. And so people aren't seeing the layering of change that's hitting us.
Yeah, and that's why I think I'm really excited to talk about today is starting with the self-awareness of how each of us individually deals with change. So we can start there first instead of jumping right into, oh, how do I get everyone else to be enthusiastic about this? Because I think if we can like get really self-aware and really aligned with being honest about, wow, I'm frustrated, I'm shocked, I'm depressed about this change, then you're more likely to um yeah, be authentic in getting other people on board with it at a sustainable pace.
All right. So let's go there. Let's talk about how we can be authentic,
Ye-
starting there.
Yes, I'm going to share just a quick image on the screen. We will share this with all of the participants afterwards, but screenshot away. This is not my content. This is from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And if any of you recognize that name, you will recognize that she is known for defining the stages of grief. And the stages of change are the same as the stages of grief, which is like both surprising and not surprising at all, right? So when we initially experience change, our brain goes into this like shock or denial mode, and you'll see that our engagement, our productivity can almost sometimes go up. So this is, hey, Robyn, that project you and I were working on together, oh, I don't think we're going to have the budget to continue it next year. And you and I would get on a meeting after that meeting and go, we're not going to let this happen, right? And you
Yeah.
like double down on it to fight against um you're in denial of whatever that change is that's coming at you. Then you've got anger, blame, and this looks different for all of us. We've probably experienced somebody yelling in a meeting when they are being handed a change that they're not happy with. Anger can also look like turning off the camera, folding your arms, rolling your eyes, and disengaging. So anger can look very different. Bargaining, I always think of that clip from Jerry Maguire where he's got the goldfish and he's like, who's coming with me? Like he's kind of saying, I'm going to make lemonades out of this lemon, even if it's a completely ridiculous condition. And then depression is sort of that low point where you're really ready to admit that you're upset, sad, grieving the change that has happened. But even though that's the lowest point, you see it's the dark before the dawn. So sometimes when you get to that point where you're like, I just feel so sad about the cultural shift that's happening at my company, or I'm just feeling so low about not being able to work with this client anymore. That's often the rock bottom that is like, okay, now we're ready to start recovering. So
Mhm.
admitting that to ourselves can be one of the most difficult but empowering steps of the process.
Mm. It's so interesting because, then after the depression comes the acceptance. And I'm thinking now of, the people are like, isn't this great? Like, we're going to change these things, or like, I know it's hard, but you'll get over it. They're probably already at acceptance, like, especially senior leaders in organizations. They've been aware of the change that's coming, they've been part of deciding what to change. And so they've already, I'd assume, gone through this curve, and they're sitting at acceptance talking to me, and I'm in shock and denial and saying, like, isn't this great? And I'm like, what the heck just happened? And now it's being put on me to communicate it when I'm not at acceptance.
And it's to yes and that, Robyn, did they even go through this? This is only for unwelcome change. If they came up with the idea, they're not going to be angry or depressed about their own idea.
That's true.
So, yeah, all of us go through this at different stages and speeds. So you wake up one morning and you realize you're out of toilet paper, and you're like, shock and denial. What? I can't believe I'm out of toilet paper. And then you get mad at your spouse or your roommate who was supposed to buy toilet paper last week. And then you bargain with like, well, I've got some Kleenex here. And then you get sad and depressed about like, oh, now I have to like redo my day to go down to the grocery store and, and then you get through acceptance. It takes 3 minutes, but you're still going through it. So for some of us, it's we can process unwelcome change very quickly. And that's what we want to do with some of the tips that we're talking about today, but you can't rush it. Sometimes you just have to be like, oh, okay, I'm feeling pretty angry this week. I'm just going to have to sit through my anger phase and realize that it's a phase.
Yeah. And can you bounce back and forth between the phases? Because at least I find, like, I tend to skip right to anger, and then I maybe bounce back to denial, and take a little spin through depression, then bounce back to anger. So can that happen as well?
It's like the Superman ride at Six Flags where like the roller coaster goes forward and then it goes back and then it goes forward again. So yeah, absolutely. You can, it's not linear, it's not formulaic. And again, if you get all the way through to the acceptance phase and then something else happens, you've got these multiple roller coasters happening at the same time in a lot of
At the
cases.
same time.
Yeah.
Got it. So that's why I feel nauseous. Um, so so what can we do?
Okay, so there are many, many books on this, and maybe we can drop some resources for
Mhm.
our attendees here in an email with some of those books and podcasts and things like that. But my favorite tips, I've got them into an acronym that's, well, it's around lunchtime. So it's the BLT sandwich. And the BLT are 3 tools that can help you either get unstuck, like if you're one of those people who gets stuck in anger, or if you're like, well, I'm not stuck, but I just keep oscillating, right, between bargaining and depression. So BLT is 3 tools. It's not like a formula, but it is tools you can put in your tool belt and you can try and pull out those tools for different experiences. So the B stands for benefit of change. And this is that like pretty simple technique of, is there a silver lining here? And I think that we underestimate the power of that cliche, like, well, is there something good here? Is there lemonade I can make out of this lemon? I think we underestimate that because it's such a broad cliche. Oh, just find something good, just find something happy. So I think it makes it easier to find the benefit of the change if you look really specifically at, okay, is there something here that's going to help me build character and like just become a better human? Is there something here that I can use as leverage for a short or long-term goal. Like a friend of mine, his company got acquired and the culture was changing and he was not a fan of what was happening. But the bigger company that acquired his company had tuition reimbursement. So he got to go get his master's of fine arts for free. Like there's that kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, if there isn't a character building or, self-promotion kind of opportunity, where can you find a sense of play in the change? Now, that doesn't work if, you're really dealing with heavy grief, loss. I wouldn't bring that up like during the pandemic or, I mean, there's very harmful situations where that doesn't apply. But like during the recession, my sister lost her job. She ended up getting two part-time jobs as like a coffee barista and a kids dance teacher. And she was like, I draw flowers in milk foam and play with little kids in tutus. That's great for this season of life. Like she was able to find the play in the unwelcome change. So that's the B. I'll pause there, Robyn, for any other questions or like, I'm curious if you have any personal examples where you've been able to pull out that kind of tool.
I would say I really like just the idea of, the benefit of change and making it personal. Because I think, again, as I think about kind of the clients I work with and the organizational side, you so often hear like the benefit to the company. And I'm like, I don't freaking care. Like, and so the idea of like, no, I have to find my personal benefit,
Yes.
I think is really important.
Yes, 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 yes. So if you're a mid-level manager and you're responsible for trying to get others on board with a change, find what works for you first. And I think that can help build empathy with the team that you also have to then, yeah, get on board.
Got
Mm.
it. Like the airline safety video, put your mask on first, then help others.
Good. Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
so
All right.
that's the bacon of our sandwich. The L, gotta add some fiber and some veggies on our BLT. So the L is locus of control. And that's that diagram with like the three rings. And that's taking inventory of everything that's upsetting you and placing it into one of three categories. What can I control? What can I influence? And then what do I need to just surrender? So, a big tree fell on my house a couple years ago and like cracked my house in half. And we had to put down one of my dogs because my dog had a heart attack when the tree fell. And there was so much. There were so many layers of that unwelcome change. It was like, where am I going to live? Is insurance going to pay for this? Oh my gosh, now I don't have this dog anymore. Like there was so much going on. And I really had to sit down and kind of list everything out and then realize that like insurance is going to take however long it's going to take. The contractors are going to take however long they're going to take. And for me to sit up at night and worry about the timing of all of that and worry about the paperwork and worry about the approvals is not inside my control at all. So what are the things that you can control in big disastrous situations like that? It's usually only your attitude. That's pretty much the only thing that ends up in that middle circle. Then of course the things you can influence are fuzzy. You can try and convince other people to do things for you or help you or move things along in a certain way. But the locus of control can sometimes be a really calming tool to say, okay, I'm going to focus on this one thing in this chaos of change, and I'm going to focus on surrendering everything else.
I think that's so interesting, surrender, because, I often feel like I don't accept this. Like I am not okay with this change. I am not okay with how it's happening, but I have no control. And th that can leave me feeling powerless. But this idea of like kind of just surrendering, like you don't have to like it, but you have to acknowledge that it's happening and you can't control it.
Yeah, sometimes even just saying that out loud to yourself or to your team, again, if you're a leader who's trying to
Yeah.
get other people on board, um, can be a really helpful realization.
Yeah. So now tell us about the tomato.
T for tomato. Okay, so the T is take the long view. So this is one of those things where sometimes I'll get really over dramatically upset about, I don't know, a traffic jam, right? Or somebody cutting me off in traffic. Or you've probably had one of those days at work where like you just absolutely flubbed a big client presentation, or you lost a deal that you thought was going to close. And those are the situations when I find myself getting too emotional for what the situation calls for. I have to ask myself, okay, how am I going to feel about this tomorrow? How am I going to feel about this in a month? How am I going to feel about this in a year? Because I think sometimes when our fight or flight brain mode kicks in, we think, oh, I didn't do so good in that client presentation. My career is over, right? We escalate. My boss is going to hate me. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get blacklisted on LinkedIn. No one will ever talk to me again. In a week, it's not going to matter, And even if you get like 4 stars instead of 5 stars on your annual performance review, is that going to matter for your career in 2 years or 5 years? Probably not. So sometimes the answer to that is, yeah, this is going to matter in 5 years, or this is going to matter in 10 years. Um, so that's why I say that these tools are not a formula, right? There isn't one tool that works for every situation. But if you can kind of look at the change that you're experiencing and say, okay, I'm going to use the B, or I'm going to use the T, and I'm going to talk to a teammate of mine who needs maybe to use the L. All these different tools work in different situations.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I realize we have 6 minutes left. I want to open it up for questions. And just as a reminder, if this is your first time joining us, Theresa and I will stay on for as long as there's questions. So let me pause the recording.